welcome to the Comics Lounge. So happy to have you. This video is just because I purely am missing summer completely, but the video you're about to watch is an expert in the business. He's been cleaning and pressing, actually conserving comics since 1981. So 40 years now. I hope that you get a chance to enjoy this video as much as I enjoyed making it. And as always, like, comment, and subscribe. But you know what we got to start with. Here's the intro.
The Avengers. That's what we call ourselves. Earth's mightiest heroes. I have an army. We have a Hulk.
We talk about cleaning and pressing. I came from more the technical side. I was a software engineer at Kodak, so I got involved in, paper and manufacturing and quality. And I didn't quite put the two together until around 2014. Friends of mine were saying, "Hey, this stuff you know about, you should do cleaning and pressing." And I go, "People pay for this? Wow, this is awesome! I got paid for this at Kodak." So you hear a lot about cleaning and pressing. People know what pressing is. It's a process that you get the folds and non-color breaking stress marks and creases out. Cleaning is removing anything that's on the surface of the book. Grease stains and stuff cannot removed by cleaning, but you can remove any kind of surface debris. I like to take a step back from that because I come from a technical background with paper conservation. So I look at those two as part of the bigger picture. So cleaning and pressing are part of conservation as a whole. And if you, again, go down the rabbit hole pretty quick, there is a really useful repository. This is not new. This has been around for 200 years, and there's actually a website called the AIC, American Institute of Conservation, and they say conservation is profession, blah, 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 which includes examination, documentation, treatment, and preventative care. I focus on the examination and treatment part. Those are the key parts when it comes to comic books, how you actually look at that book and what treatment you prescribe for that. So what does that mean for comics? So I would basically say conservation for comics is anytime you take the book and you're not adding to it. Conservation is a non-additive process because when you add to the comic, it's restored. So if you put glue, tape, inks, rice paper, blah, 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 anything not original, it becomes a restored book. Sometimes you get that conserved label, that's kind of a special case, but in general, conservation for comics is anything to do with the book that doesn't make it restored. Because I think the goal everyone has here is to increase the value of the book. And secondly, like in your case, Joe, you wanted to make sure the book's around for a longer lifespan. Here's a good example. The difference between everyone in the world does cleaning and pressing. I do conservation. So conservation is a kind of a holistic approach. So my analogy is a car. You have this beat up junk heap of a car. You want to do some work on it, so what do? Well, people clean and press, which is analogous to waxing and polishing the car. What happens if you take a junk heap and you wax and polish it? Well, you get a shiny junk heap. Not much different. So there's defects that cleaning and pressing do not address. Conservation as a whole will. So if you conserve that, in this case, car, you get a nice new car. So all of the pieces and parts of conservation I'll step into in just a second, but I wanted to go over some of the tools. And I'm sure some of you have seen or heard some of the tools that cleaning and pressing people use, mainly a heat press and humidity chamber sometimes to humidify the books, or maybe a clothes or garment steamer. I didn't bring those today, but I brought some other tools. So essentially, you have some examination tools. First thing you want to do is take a look at the book. You have various lights. I have little lights like this. This is a UV light, which does not detect restoration. People think it does. It does not. This is kind of useless for restoration, but it's a good light to carry around. Little magnifiers, if you have jeweler's loupes, these are great for looking closely at books. It's great for detecting restoration also. And the most important thing that I found is just having a good set of clean hands. Because when you touch the book, sometimes you can feel surface debris. You can feel glue on the spines. You can spot and feel like little tears and rips. The worst thing you can do is not see those rips and tears, and you start cleaning the book and pieces come flying off. There's various cleaning supplies, and I'll show you a couple of examples. A lot of guys use these kind of erasers. These are vinyl, and the nice thing about this, it does not leave a residue. If you use the gum-based ones that are like pink colored, the art gum ones that are kind of yellow, they leave residue behind. You'll actually get defects on the grader's notes that say eraser marks because you use non-vinyl erasers. You can also use eraser bags, and I'll show you an example of one of those in just a second. They're kind of like erasers, but they're just little particles of erasers. I use micro spatulas also, and these are useful for, like, peeling tape off and scraping little residue and surface debris off. These are very flexible. You can get these at most, like, little art stores and stuff. And this is also a pretty interesting thing. This is a crepe eraser. If you've got tape residue, this is fantastic for getting glue and residue off of comics. This is basically just rubber cement, just kind of solidified. And you can cut it and take little pieces off, and it's great. It's actually kind of sticky. And then two other things that people rarely, if ever, and I've never seen people use these at all, but I use a barometer here to check the humidity levels. So whenever I humidify the books, I want to see humidity it's at. A lot of guys just take a garment steamer and just hose the book down and, like, say magically, hey, it's humidified. I use humidity chambers. Well, in this case, they're more like diffusion chambers. I could talk about that a little bit, but I'll just briefly say diffusion chambers is just kind of a container where you have some kind of vapor in there. In this case, it's water, it's moisture, but I check the humidity levels. And then this thing, no one's ever used. So I used these a lot when I was working at Kodak. This is actually a moisture content meter. And this is critical. A lot of guys, again, they'll just humidify books and say, I think we're good, we're going to go. But you don't know how much moisture is in that paper. So I'll show you in just a minute a couple of charts. But this is great because you want the paper to get up about 10% humidity or 10% moisture content. If you don't have enough moisture in there, the book will not be supple enough. The humidification did not work or won't be as effective. So this is a key tool, and you can get these like for 60, 70 bucks. And I'll show you more about this in just a minute. And then the last thing, of course, like I mentioned, is a heat press. You can also use vacuum chambers. And people have never heard of that, but conservators do use vacuum chambers now. So a few more tools that I didn't bring. This is something I use. These are folding tools. If you're a cartographer, you know what these things are. Basically, they used to be made of bone. These are made of plastic. These are great little tools. They're kind of like these micro spatulas, except these have nice soft contoured edges. These are great for working little folds and bends out of the books. And you have to go in there and manually remove this stuff. A press won't get a fold or a crease out that's on the spine or on a little edge. These tools will. And there's also a little tool here called the burnisher. This is very good for polishing out matte and water spots. Again, people don't usually use these tools. This is one of those cleaning pads I mentioned. In lieu of a vinyl eraser, these little bags you can use, and they're full of eraser particles, and they're basically meant to be squeezed. The particles come out, rub it around. Conservators use these a lot. They make a lot of mess. They're very, dirty and messy, so I don't tend to use that as much as just erasers. You can also use this absorbing, which is like a putty, and it's used to lift dust and dirt. The problem with this is it leaves some residue behind. I don't like to use this, again, because it's labor intensive. The process that I use, like I said, first thing I do is take a look at the book, determine what's wrong with it, what needs to be done, kind of assess is it worth grading or conserving, and then I'll go through and look for restoration. Anything I can spot at that moment. Is there restoration? If there is, I'll take care of the restoration, or if it's extensive, I'll just let it go. In either case, I'll determine, do we need to clean the book? Is there some kind of residue that I can remove? I'll go through, clean the book. I'll see, do we need to humidify the book? Is there some kind of defect that will benefit if I humidify? If not, I'm done. I cleaned it, checked it for restoration, finished. Most books are not this easy. Most of the time you have to go through, humidify the book, inspect and fix any defects you can repair manually. So after you do the manual fixes, you can go through and press the book. And then after, this is important, after I press the book, I do one last check on it. Because sometimes when you go through the press, you introduce defects, like some debris in the press, little dimples, or you missed something. Maybe you see some more dirt or soiling, so you want to go back and clean it again. If not, you go back, humidify the book, fix the little defects, and then put it in the press again. Hopefully you do it once and it's done right the first time.
Alright guys, thanks for watching part 1 of this really cool series that we're doing on conservation of comics. So it's not just cleaning and pressing, but it's conserving that paper so that it lasts for a longer period of time. This was a really cool event that happened at my local comic shop. I hope you really enjoyed part 1 of this, and I really want to do more stuff like this. I love this side of comics. As I told you, I love the history of comics. I love the ways that we can kind of see history inside of comic. Thanks for lounging with us. Stay tuned for part 2. If you are not subscribed, make sure that you go down and you hit that subscribe button. Smash that like button.
Does anybody know the significance of this Tom and Jerry comic book down there? Any guesses? You get a free comic if you guess. This box is free over here.
That's the first comic.
So that was, yes, that was the first comic that I purchased. It was 1973 August. I was 5 years old. I couldn't read it, but I thought it was pretty awesome.